Hello, hello, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for our Housing is a Human Right webinar here with the Charter for Compassion. While we're waiting, you're welcome to put in the chat where you're joining us from. We're very excited to be able to amplify the voices of wonderful organizations that are doing incredible work addressing the housing and homelessness crisis in their own communities. So I'm very, very excited that we're able to hear from all of them. Today, we get to hear from all of them in the same session. And then after today, for the next 5 Tuesdays, we will be featuring each one of them for the full hour. That way you can learn more in depth about what they're doing in their own little places and in their own little communities. My name is Felipe Zurita, and I am the marketing director of the Charter. And I'm happy to be able to introduce you to 6 different wonderful people that are here to share a little bit more about the different organizations that they belong to and how they are addressing the homelessness and housing crisis.
Hello, everyone. Susan Soleil from the Charter for Compassion, and I am so grateful to our panelists here. It's been 6 months in the making, and I appreciate everyone making time to be with us today. Thank you.
Amber, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Amber Fogarty. I'm the president of Mobile Loaves and Fishes, and we run Community First Village in Austin, Texas. And I'm coming to you from a beautiful city where the sun is shining, and we are in the midst of the hottest July on record, after the hottest June on record, and the hottest May on record. So suffice it to say, it is burning hot in Austin, Texas, and that burns our passion even more deeply to lift our neighbors off the streets into a permanent home and a supportive community at Community First Village. Glad to be with y'all today.
Thank you, Amber, for being here. Camille and Samuel?
Yeah,
yes, I'm Camille Whitney with the Other Side Village, Director of Community Partnerships, and I'll turn the time over to Sam.
Yeah, my name is Sam Grenny. I am the Director of Communications for the Other Side Village. We are a master plan community that is hoping to scale to slightly over 400 homes in Salt Lake City. We are still in the development phase, so we haven't started new construction, but we've started our programming aspect. In Salt Lake City, we have a growing homelessness problem. We've had some significant investments in the past, but they have not been consistent. And so we've seen homelessness just continue to rise in our community. And this is part of a city initiative to try to create a long-term solution.
Thank you so much for that. We're very excited to have you here. Since I am also in Salt Lake City, I know a little bit about your project, and it's very, very cool. Wow, what I've seen so far. Nate.
My name is Nate Schluter. I'm from Springfield, Missouri, and I'm the Chief Visionary Officer for Eden Village.
Thank you. And Eden Village, could you tell us a little about the location? Where is Eden Village located?
Yeah, so we have 2 Eden Villages in Springfield, Missouri. They're pocket neighborhoods with a community center, and then we're developing 10 other Eden Villages across the country in 9 other states through partnerships with local communities and nonprofits.
Wow, awesome. Thank you. And thank you for being here. Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Bryant, from the co-founder and executive director of SquareOne Villages in Eugene, Oregon. If you watched any of the world champion track championship here this last week, that's what's here in Eugene. So we're a small city with big ideas, and one of those is SquareOne, that began as a shelter organization creating non-congregate shelter. And that was our only goal. And then we discovered that it was so difficult to move people into housing, we decided to become an affordable housing creator, and now have created 4 different affordable housing projects. Got a big one, 70-unit project we're launching this fall. I'll tell you more about that later.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Dan. And last but not least, we have Maria Fernanda.
Yes, thank you so much, Felipe. I'm Maria Fernanda. I am actually Dominican, but currently living in Monterrey, Mexico. I'm the director of funds and alliances for Techo here in Nuevo León. Nuevo León is a state here in Mexico, and very excited to be here. Very hot too.
Yes, I think that we're all sort of like experiencing the same thing, huh? Crazy summer, crazy weather. Everything's crazy in the world right now. And so because of that, it's very, very awesome to be able to feature the work that you are doing. And one of the purposes of this webinar is for compassionate cities, compassionate communities, and other people in the compassionate realm to learn about how different organizations are addressing the housing homelessness crisis, and especially in different communities. We know what you're doing, and so we are happy to be able to hopefully inspire others to follow steps and join this movement as well. And so the order that we're gonna be doing is gonna be Amber first, then we're gonna go with Camille and Sam, then Dan, Nate, and Maria Fernanda. So the first question that I wanted to ask you is about your project. So what is your organization doing, and how are you doing it? And so we'll start with Amber.
So Mobile Loaves and Fishes opened Community First Village about 6.5 years ago. And today we are a 51-acre master planned community. And we have 388 neighbors that call Community First Village home today. And on these first 2 phases, we'll have about 550 folks. And then we have 2 additional phases that are in the site development process. And we will have permits by the end of the year to build 1,400 more homes. So over the next decade, we'll have about 2,000 neighbors that call Community First Village home across 4 phases. Mobile Loaves and Fishes has existed for almost 25 years, and we have been serving people experiencing homelessness for all of that time. And Community First Village came from our understanding of what our neighbors needed based on what they continued to tell us, that they were struggling to find not just housing, not just 4 walls and a roof, but community. And what we've come to understand is that when you experience homelessness, you understand community better than most people who've always had a home. Because in order to survive on the streets, you have to rely on your neighbors. You cannot survive in a life of homelessness without counting on the people around you to support you, to take care of you, to look after you. And our neighbors really form these tight-knit communities on the streets. But the way that housing works across this country, it's often done in this scattered site fashion that doesn't allow our neighbors who have experienced homelessness and who really understand community to be able to live together in community. And so we started lifting folks off the streets 15 years ago with this vision of building a master planned community. And 6.5 years ago, we opened that village, and it has continued to grow. It is such a special place where our neighbors don't just have a place to live, but they have a place to belong. That really is what we are all about. We're about creating belonging. One of the things that I love the most about Community First Village is the opportunity for our neighbors to work and earn a dignified income right here on site. We have a variety of different work opportunities for our neighbors. We have micro enterprise programs. All of the art that's hanging behind me on the wall was all painted by neighbors who live at Community First Village. So we have a fine art program. We do pottery, ceramics, we make jewelry. Just a wide variety of really amazing things that our neighbors are able to do where they use their gifts and talents to do purposeful work. In addition to that, when you have a 51-acre master plan community, there's also a lot of things that need to be done. So just out my window right now, there are neighbors that are mowing and weed eating and contributing to making this community beautiful by participating in our variety of opportunities for dignified income. So our goal is to help our neighbors experience the dignity of work in the place that they live. We focus on people who have experienced chronic homelessness. So everyone who lives at Community First Village has been homeless for at least a year. The average length of homelessness is 9 years for the folks who call Community First Village home, and the average age is about 57 years old. We love our neighbors. We think that they are some of the most extraordinary and resilient people we've ever met. And we look forward to continuing to share their stories with you throughout this webinar series.
Amber, thank you. And what a wonderful little explanation of what your group is doing. So now, Camille, Sam, please.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So it's awesome to go after Amber. Community First has been a significant source of inspiration for us. We've been out there a couple of times, and we're really grateful for what they're doing. So our village, the goal is to scale to, like I said, slightly over 400 homes over a few phases of development. But the real village is what you see behind me right here. So we believe that regardless of the total number of homes, where the real magic is going to happen is in each individual neighborhood. They It'll be designed in pocket orientations like this, 25 to 30 homes a piece. And each of those communities is going to have their own kind of internal system to help it function and deal with conflict and solve problems. So I'm just going to walk you guys through our mission statement real quick. I'll be quick about it. So our goal is to create a self-reliant, peer-led village that provides a safe, dignified, and uplifting life for those who've been chronically unsheltered, and which brings them and the larger community into mutually ennobling relationships. So a lot of fancy jargon, but one piece at a time. A self-reliant village means that we'll run social enterprises out of our nonprofit, which will help us be operationally self-sufficient. So we'll go out and fundraise for things like new construction and development. But when it comes to our day-to-day operations, our goal is to be self-sufficient based on our different income avenues. That gives us the opportunity to be much more free in terms of how we operate. Peer-led village. So that means we will use a restorative justice program to help and empower neighbors to deal with their conflict and deal with problems in their neighborhoods. So rather than staffing up huge amounts of security and staff and enforcement, what we're going to have is a really intentional culture that helps neighbors learn the skills and create the culture around just dealing with conflict when it arises. A safe, dignified, and uplifting life. So to us, there's a few components to that. The first is a home that each of us would live in, with a kitchen and a bathroom and all the amenities that in a state like Utah that has extreme weather that we would need to be comfortable. Wraparound services accessible on site. So really creating ease of access for people who live at our community to access mental health and medical services, even things like veterinary care and a grocery store. And then enabling whole person change. So addressing, the very important mental health care needs and medical needs, but also all of the other aspects that each of us know that we need to live a fulfilled and happy life. And then lastly, to bring the larger community in the village into mutually ennobling relationships. So not to put this aside into a corner of Salt Lake City and try to hide away a problem, but to make this a centerpiece of our state, a destination for people who want to not just experience solutions, but be a part of one of the most compassionate and wonderful communities that they can visit. So that's the Other Side Village.
Ooh, that's amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Samuel. Dan first, and then Nate.
Yeah, SquareOne Villages we began organizing in 2012. Eugene has I think we do. We have the highest unsheltered population per 100,000 people in the nation, and a group of activists. I was a pastor of a downtown church for over 25 years, and I and a bunch of others got together and said, we've got to do something to create a place where our unsheltered neighbors can safely be. And so we created our first project, Opportunity Village Eugene, that is at the time we called them tiny homes, but they're not homes, they're sleeping cabins. No water, no electricity even, just a place where you could go and have a bed and a door that locks, a safe place, and in a village setting. Very much like our previous speakers, we very much value creating villages, communities where people can help each other and that are semi-self-managed. In fact, I did a video on PBS where the opening line was, it's a gated community for the homeless. Rich people get gated communities. Why shouldn't low-income people also have gated communities? From that, as I said previously, we decided to branch into creating true affordable housing and have built several other projects using tiny homes. So very economical to build, utilizing a lot of volunteers wherever possible. We involved a number of different architects and different builders to create that community of 22 tiny homes, and then replicated that in a rural community south of Eugene, then branched out of that and created a micro village of just 6 units on a single family lot. And then have 2 other projects that we're working on that also speak a little bit more in depth a little bit later. If you can imagine 3 overlapping circles, our basic values are creating affordability, using that tiny home structure, creating very basic homes but good, high quality, that are environmentally friendly. So very much we value sustainability and creating a different model, different lifestyle that is eco-friendly, and then democratic, involving our residents so that they have a say in their housing. And combining those things to create then these communities where people can live very affordably for as long as they need.
Thank you. You know, that's a very important part, you know, the democratic part about including the oh, sorry, that was a timer. Including the people that you're helping voices and opinions in the whole planning situation. That's empowering, that's powerful. Thank you. Nate.
Yeah, my name is Nate Schluter. I work for Eden Village, and Eden Village is part of a nonprofit that was founded in 2010 called The Gathering Tree. It was founded by two couples in Springfield, Missouri, that moved downtown and befriended their new neighbors who were people living on the streets. And so through those relationships, in 2016, we decided to start building homes for our friends that were homeless in Springfield, Missouri. And so we raised our first dollar in 2016, and we moved our first resident in August of 2018, exactly 2 years to the date of the first check given for the village. In 2019, we began constructing our second village, and today we have 2 villages in Springfield, Missouri, with a total of 55 homes, 31 at one village and 24 at the other. Every village has a community center. And we ask people to live by the same basic rules that you and I live by. Rule number 1 is everyone must pay something. Our residents pay $325 a month, utilities included, no deposit. Then we ask them to live in a crime and drug-free community, and nothing more. So we partner with local organizations that do what they do best, and they come into our community center and provide the much needed wraparound services that residents can take advantage of if they so choose to. We don't ask people to do things that we wouldn't have to do to pay our mortgage or to pay our rent. And Eden Village is designed to be an easily duplicated and replicated model for other communities. We comply within existing zoning to avoid a not in my backyard movement. We have a construction team that manufactures homes in a variety of ways to meet local zoning. So it could be a manufactured home, a park model RV, or a modular home. And so in 2020, we started licensing our model to other communities, and we're in 10 different cities and 9 different states at different stages of developing Eden Villages in their communities. So I think some of the things that we've learned really is that our homeless friends, we would say that talent is universal, but maybe opportunities not. And we can release the opportunities to people that maybe we were given. The community can flourish, people's lives are changed. And then we bring the community in. We rely on over 600 monthly volunteers in Springfield alone to build relationships. And so our mission is to build relationships and communities for our homeless friends. And the most important thing in that is the relationships. Our vision is for cities where no one sleeps outside. And then our legacy that we think that we can leave is to change people's perceptions of the homeless. And so maybe the community comes in and volunteers and they leave more compassionate towards people that are still out on the streets, still on our waiting lists, waiting for more Eden Villages to come to their community.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And Maria Fernanda.
Thank you. So yes, I currently am working for Techo. That we are an organization, that was born in Chile 25 years ago. So we've been around for a little while here in Latin America. Techo has 15 years here working in Mexico. And since then, we've been building houses basically for communities that are around here, the city. And it's really interesting because most of the cities, they start building up as irregular communities that form on the outer part of the city. So it's really hard most of the times for the government to help them out and to deliver the needs that the people currently have. So what we do as Techo is that we arrive to these communities and we talk to them about their problems, their issues that they're currently facing, and we try to help them out with their living situation. We build houses for them, and basically what we do is that we build them in a sequence of one weekend, tops 2 weekends, because these are modular houses that are for emergency use. So this helps the situation immediately. And what it does is basically you have these families that don't have to worry about where they're gonna, sleep for the night. So they can basically go out, work, and provide for their families without having to think about the situation where their families are gonna sleep or where basically going to reside for that evening. So that's basically how we work and how we enter to the communities. And from that on, then we try to provide the communities with the help that they need for basically like things along health, along education, along infrastructure. And once we have that complete, then we move to another community. So that's how we've been building houses all around Latin America and basically growing as well.
Thank you so much, Maria Fernanda. And when I am from Chile. I grew up born and raised in Chile, and in my high school experience, I did Techo para Chile one weekend when I was there as a junior in high school, and it was life-changing. So super grateful that you're here. And honestly, I mean, seeing Techo develop from just Chile to all Latin America is just mind-blowing for sure. So thank you for being here and representing that great organization. For people that are having questions or putting questions in the chat, you're welcome to do so. We're going to try to get to those as we are finished with our round of questions here. Just to let you know, a lot of the technical, more nitty-gritty questions that you might be asking, if you're part of a compassionate city or a compassionate community that is wanting to maybe start this, the hour-long webinars dedicated to each one of those organizations will be the perfect time for you to learn about that. Maybe about funding, maybe about like, who are your connections? How did you get the land? Like all these things, all those questions, like, please, we would love to have all those questions to answer those in the different time, in the different webinars that will be dedicated to those. But I wanted to ask a question to all our panelists again about your why. Why is it that you're doing this work? Is there a backstory? The people that maybe started this, why did they decide to do this? And the other thing is that I don't know if our audience is realizing, but there's an element of commonality here. Not only that all these organizations are addressing the same issues about homelessness and crisis, or homelessness and housing crises, but their solution in a sense is sort of similar. We're talking about modular homes, we're talking about tiny homes, micro homes, and so this is something that we kind of saw as an element of commonality between all these organizations. So maybe talk about like the why of those tools as well. So we'll start with Amber once again, and we'll go Amber, Camille, Sam, Dan, Nate, and Maria Fernanda.
So Mobile Loaves and Fishes, our why is that we empower communities into a lifestyle of service with the homeless, not for them, not to them, but with them. So everything that we do is about being in deep and enduring relationship with our neighbors who have experienced homelessness. And that has allowed us to create this beautiful and thriving community where we have hundreds of people every single week who are empowered into that lifestyle of service together in a community. And so what I love so much about the work that we do is the way that we bring people together. We connect human to human, heart to heart. We believe that all of us share two fundamental characteristics. That's true for every single one of us. We all desire to be fully and wholly known, and we all desire to be fully and wholly loved. And that's what our work is about. It's about creating a community, creating a space where you can be both fully and wholly known and fully and wholly loved. And we want that experience to be true for our neighbors who have experienced homelessness, as well as every volunteer who comes to this village to serve alongside of us, every donor, every staff member, every board member, every person that's a part of this community. We want them to experience being fully and wholly known and fully and wholly loved, because we believe that's what unlocks really the richness of who we are. And when I think about what has gathered all of us together today, it's compassion, right? That we want to have this deep compassion for each other. And our neighbors who have experienced homelessness have walked through a tremendous amount of struggle in their life. They have experienced trauma that is often beyond our human comprehension. And what they need is to be in community. They need to be in relationship with other people who love them without judgment, who love them without condition. And that's really what this village strives to do. We believe that the single greatest cause of homelessness is the profound catastrophic loss of family. And so Community First Village strives to bring people together in family, in community, in relationship with one another. We also believe that housing alone will never solve homelessness, but community will. So our why is what we do out here is not about the homes. People come out here and they're so intrigued by the housing. We have beautiful homes at Community First Village. We have amazing tiny homes and park model RVs. We have 3D 3D printed homes. So all of this housing that draws people in and they're so intrigued by it. But what we do here has nothing to do with housing. It has everything to do with community. It has everything to do with that human to human, heart to heart relationship that you form. And I really consider every neighbor at Community First Village to be part of my family, and I am part of theirs. And that is the beauty of this place and what I hope we're able to inspire across the country. As we work to empower communities into a lifestyle of service, we have created this replication program. We've had folks from 150 cities around the world and have come to Community First Village to learn, to explore how to replicate this model. And we're so proud of all of the communities that are on the path to do that, as well as those that have already opened their own villages and created this beautiful place for people to experience the profound compassion of community.
Thank you, Amber. What a beautiful answer. Camille and Samuel with the other side of the village.
Yes, I'll start off. So I worked here in Salt Lake City for an organization called the Salt Lake Downtown Alliance, which is an organization that focuses on improving downtown Salt Lake City. And it's also an affiliate of the Salt Lake Chamber, the largest chamber in the state of Utah. And I spent the last 10 years of my 15 years working there, working specifically on issues related to homelessness, especially in our urban core in the downtown. It was, as you guys can imagine, was significant. That's where all the shelters and services were provided for most of the state. And so we had a large concentration, we currently do still have large concentration of both services and unsheltered homelessness in the downtown area. And so I worked on creating a number of different solutions to help address some of those issues that affect businesses and property owners in our area. And in doing that, you have to really serve the needs of the people who are experiencing homelessness. The challenges they present to the surrounding area are because they have nowhere else to be. They have no services, don't have what they need. And so the compassionate solution to that is to solve their problems, and therefore you solve the problems of the surrounding community that are affected by that homelessness. And so it really kind of gave me a different perspective on how best to help people, and just worked on a number of different solutions over the years. And first learned about Community First Village in Austin in 2018. I went to a tour there when we were there for a conference, and was just so moved by what they had created, and really felt that kind of aha moment of, this is the kind of thing we need in Utah. This is the right way to do this, to house people in this community setting where there's all this support and to help people replace what they're missing and have lost in their lives. And so began, talking with people in the community, friends at the Other Side Academy initially, and then as things started to build momentum, the Academy got more, the Other Side Academy, who is essentially the founding partner of this, became really interested in taking part in it. And this is an organization I've known since they began operations, and another fantastic organization that provides a 2-year life skills re-education program for people who struggle with not only homelessness, but chronic addiction and also criminal activity. And so people come there in lieu of prison or jail time most often. They can come there on their own as well. But it's a great program that really helps people rebuild their lives. It's a community, therapeutic community approach, and it's unique in drug treatment and other styles of treatment that are very common. And so I always was a tremendous fan and appreciated their model and how they approach things so much. And so I was just really grateful that they rose their hand and said, yes, we want to do this. And with their background and their approach, I knew it would be a success. And fortunately, they had a kind of a previous long-term relationship with Community First Village with Amber and Alan, and they'd worked in the standalone program together. So it was just really great timing. And then we went, and as we started the exploratory process, we've visited with many other villages. We've met with Dan at Eden Village on a conference call. We've been to Eden Village. We met with Dan at SquareOne. Of course, we've been to Community First a couple of times and some other places. And so we really have caught this vision of a really profound way to help people find permanent home, but not only that, community and a compassionate community that surrounds them and helps really address this problem of chronic homelessness. And we too hope that this model will continue to spread. We'll continue to share what we've learned and what we're doing with others and help replicate the model. I'll turn the rest of the time over to Sam. He can add anything else you'd like to that question.
I think you covered it great. I think, yeah, for us, it's all about strategic compassion and being, both compassionate and thoughtful in the way that we place our resources and allocate. We've all seen projects that are compassionate, but do not present long-term solutions. And I think what's been so inspiring to us about Community First and a lot of the other models we've looked at is that they're oriented towards empowering people to solve their own problems and really take control of their neighborhoods. And we believe that's a much more sustainable solution.
That's amazing. Thank you. And, very interesting partnership here with Downtown Alliance and with the Other Side Academy. So again, because we live in Salt Lake City, I know a little bit about this, and it's very exciting to see how this project has been growing and developing once the land wasn't.
I just wanted to add, sorry, I'm no longer with the Downtown Alliance. I'm full-time with the Other Side Village. And
oh, you're full-time? Oh, okay. There you go.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
So
thank you.
Ran that together.
Okay. Well, good to know then. Let's see. Dan.
So I'll share my personal story. So I became the pastor at First Christian Church in the heart of Eugene, 1991. It's a very historic, very prominent building downtown Eugene. And as a result, we had a lot of people walking in just seeking help. The congregation had started a clothing ministry back in the 50s, all run by volunteers, served 50 to 100 people with free clothing throughout the week. We started a free breakfast on Sunday morning with the help of several other churches that was serving about 300 people breakfast. We had a walk-in ministry just to provide counseling and support to people that would serve 50 to 100 people a week. We started a trailer shelter behind the church when it became legal to do so in the city of Eugene, and had 3 trailers where we housed people for over 20 years. Serving over 150 people during that time. A number of other ministries that we developed. And when we started SquareOne in 2012, I said to the congregation, the old story about the people that a town with a river running through it and drowning people in the river and organizing to pull people out of the river to save them from drowning. And finally one guy throws up his hands and walks away, start heading upriver, and the other people, where are you going? We need you here. And he says, I'm going up the river to figure out why people are falling in. And I said, that's me, that's my story. I'm spending so much time pulling drowning people out of the river. I want to figure out what we can do to keep them from falling in. And so together with several other advocates, as I say, we created this nonprofit, all run by volunteers for the first couple of years, and created this non-congregate shelter, and then morphed into creating affordable housing when we realized it wasn't enough just to give people a place off the street. We need to figure out how to solve the problem, to create a new model for affordable housing. So we were astounded when we started, when we realized that actually the model for affordable housing in this country, using tax credit financing primarily, is unaffordable. There's an article just recently on California. There's 7 different projects in the state of California where the cost per unit for the housing they were building was over $1 million per unit. The cost of building housing in this country is no longer affordable. And here in this community, we were looking at $250,000 to $300,000 per unit of housing, typically using tax credit financing. And we decided we've got to figure out a different way to do this. And so using a combination of methods of starting with tiny homes, because most of the unhoused people were single individuals and couples without children. We as a community did a fairly decent job of providing housing for families, but we were failing individuals. And so tiny homes are great for individuals, and using a lot of volunteer labor and other things. And then using self-governance to also bring the costs down, so you're not paying a landlord. And finally, creating a model that gives our residents an ownership stake. Our projects are not rental projects. We do housing co-ops where the co-ops own and operate the housing. And in the latest model that we've developed called a limited equity co-op, they actually have real equity in the project, and the co-op as a whole owns the housing. The nonprofit functions as a community land trust to steward the property. And I'll go more into detail in that model later when I do my full presentation, because I really believe this model offers a way to create affordable housing long-term in perpetuity that is significantly more affordable.
Amazing. Thank you, Dan. Nate.
Yeah, I think a lot of our whys have a lot of commonality organizationally, and I'll just spend a couple minutes telling you about my personal why. I found myself in Austin, Texas in 2009, and I lived in what's considered a super zip code, Westlake Hills, and my office was 1 stoplight away. And the nearest bus stop was 2 miles. And there was a homeless person. Her name was Emily. She lives at Community First Village now. And every day when I'm going to work, Emily is there. And sometimes she has her head wrapped. Sometimes she's wearing a sling. And if I'd had a rough day of work, I never did it. But sometimes I just wanted to scream, Emily, get a job, right? Do something. I knew that my friend with a restaurant across the street had offered her a job, and she had said that she made more money on the corner. And so of the Capital of Texas Highway and Bee Cave Road. And so, but then on Sundays, when my kids are in the car, we're going to church, I'm like everybody else, and I'm throwing money at Emily because I want my kids to grow up seeing us be compassionate towards people that have less. And one Saturday I woke up and had faced the stark reality of what a hypocrite I was. And so 2 of our kids and I went hiking into the Greenbelt and intentionally walked into a homeless camp and started building relationships. We took a radical step of embracing people that smell differently than us and live differently than us, and built true friendship with them. And it radically changed my life. I quit my job 3 months later, raised support for a couple of years. We started a nonprofit to create dignified income and release opportunity for people in Austin, Texas. And then I met Alan Graham at Mobile Loaves and Fishes, and worked with them for a couple years, and moved home to Springfield, Missouri, ultimately. And so looking back now, over the last 12 years, but really over my entire life, I think that God was preparing me for this amazing journey. When I first met people that were homeless and built relationships, I thought that there was a easy and explainable fix and repair that either work would fix and repair or housing would fix and repair. And then that the community safety net, right, that we're all talking about would fix and repair. And where I'm at today is that I think driven out of my faith that as a Christian, we have to wrestle with the fact that Jesus walked through crowds of people and only touched a few, and that some wounds don't heal this side of heaven, right? And we're called to love people as they are, accept people as they are. And the ultimate and bittersweet success of Eden Village that happens on average every 4 months is one of our neighbors, somebody we've invested in and loved well, passes away in their home, right? And that's the bittersweet success of permanent supportive housing, is that people get to live and die just like we do in a home.
Thank you for sharing that, Nate. What an inspiring story. Maria Fernanda.
Yes, so my story actually starts probably like 15 years ago, when I was a student too. Most of our volunteers are actually young people, or students from high school or from universities. So they have the opportunity to participate, because here in Latin America, we have a lot of social work that has to be done like while you are a student. I had the privilege of earning a scholarship when I was a student, and I thought like, well, you know, maybe going a weekend with Techo would be like a good opportunity to like retribute back to my community what they're giving me with this scholarship. So it's just like, you know, kind of, I'm giving you a hand because you gave me a hand, this sort of thing. And so I went out there for a weekend to build my first house, and it was a life-changing moment. Fell in love with the family, fell in love with every single one of the kids in the community, with the food, with everything, and understood a lot of things that I wasn't aware of because of my privilege. So Anne actually asked a really good question in the chatter, and it was that if we built homes, for example, in suburbs, and many people would believe that we don't, but we actually do, because sometimes suburbs and communities are just a wall away. So even if you don't see it, you know, the inequality is there, and you don't see it because there's just a big fence wall that is dividing it, so you can't see it. So I had the privilege of growing up in a place where I would see, you know, poverty on the other side of the wall, but I didn't walk to the other side of the wall. And when I did, then, you know, that mental wall that you have came down crumbling. And you start seeing like, okay, these people are in need because they didn't have the privilege that I had, like to earn a scholarship, to go to school and actually earn a job that could help them, you know, make their situation better. What can I do to make that happen? You know, maybe I'm not able to provide them an education because, you know, I'm not a professor, or maybe I'm not able to provide them, you know, with health because I'm not a doctor. But if I am able to build a house and help them sleep at night so they can have the energy to wake up and go to school or go to work, then I am already helping. So that was basically like my story. And ever since I understood that, then I knew that it was my calling too. And I went from volunteering in Techo to working in other places, and eventually came back to work in Techo, because I found out that even though like, you know, working in other places was fulfilling and it was nice too, like it wasn't the real calling, because at the end of the day, when you are in this type of job, of work, what you receive instead of money, instead of time, instead of everything, that smile, that, you know, gratitude from the families are enough, like to basically keep on moving. So yeah, that's my story.
Thank you, Maria Fernanda. Wow, listening to your story, it really reminds me of like sort of like my shakeup. I mean, honestly, Techo is an incredible organization. It shakes up like all this like privileged high school kids' lives by just taking a weekend into these neighborhoods where houses are made out of like plastic and leftover, shingles and whatever is possible to create some sort of shelter. And then you go there, you build this like modular home with the family, and you eat with them and you talk to them and you get to know them, and you see the living conditions that you probably never even thought possible. And here's a family living in those conditions. And yeah, I remember the shock value that Dicho gave me as a high school student when I was 16. So thank you for being here. Seriously, I'm so excited for your webinar as well. So thank you everyone for sharing all this incredible answers. I feel so inspired already. I would like to open the questions to everyone in the audience. We have a couple of questions already that if everyone wants to answer, that's great, because then we can have a little bit of different perspectives. So I will pull up the first one. So we have one from Ruth Hope, who's in Compassionate St. Augustine in Florida. And she's in Northeast Florida. It is the land and the horizontal infrastructure like roads, water, electricity, sewage that makes building houses unaffordable. Construction of a home can be $55,000 at the moment, but the horizontal infrastructure costs make it impossible. How do the villages buy land and pay for the horizontal infrastructure? Do you want to go in the same order? Amber first.
I'm happy to jump in. So I mentioned that Mobile Loaves and Fishes empowers communities into a lifestyle of service with the homeless. And so that's really our answer to this. Each of the 4 phases of land have been donated to us. So we've had a private donor that has purchased the land and donated it. And then we've raised the money privately through philanthropy in order to pay for the horizontal infrastructure for our villages.
Thank you. Camille or Sam?
We have a partnership with our Salt Lake City mayor, and we worked closely with her to find land, to actually secure the land, city-owned land. And we're in the process right now of working out the details of the lease for that, a long-term, highly discounted lease for that property. The total acreage is about 38 acres. Our phase 1, our first phase is 8 acres. And so we've been working on that process and the rezone for it directly in partnership with our mayor. So the land eventually virtually is donated to us for all intents and purposes, even though we won't have ownership. It'll be most likely at least a 50-year lease. So, and then donations, we're working with both donations for the actual services in kind from providers, such as for the construction of so all the underground utilities, roads and such, some of that will be donated, labor at the least. And so we're working with a kind of a cadre of architects, builders, contractors to do our infrastructure. And that's all being paid for through donation, both in cash. We have a number of donations from supporters of, previous supporters of the Academy. We've had great support already from ones who already believe in the work this organization has done in the Academy, and then we've been fundraising as well. So a variety of sources for the capital improvements, but as Sam mentioned before, our operations, once we're up and running, will be funded through our social enterprises, which the Academy has done since its 2nd year in operation, has been fully self-sufficient, and is actually our first donor, first major donor from the profits from the Academy were our very first donation for the village. So that's kind of our model is city land donated and then donations and fundraising.
Awesome, thank you. Dan, Nate, and Maria Fernanda?
So we have used a combination of techniques, a lot of fundraising. Our first project, Emerald Village, or actually Opportunity Village, our shelter project, was 100% fundraising, $200,000, half of that in-kind donations, but it was built on city-owned land. We went to the city council with our basic concept and asked them to find an acre of land the city already owned and to provide that for us as a pilot project for 1 year. It's now 9 years later. We're still on that same piece of property. And then we just did a lot of fundraising. We got grants to purchase one property in the urban or the rural community I mentioned, got a $200,000 grant to purchase that property. We've had major donors, 25,000 on up to 250,000 and even larger. I have one donor now that at the end of the day will put in $1 million into our next project that we're doing. And then we went to our state legislature. So we've developed really good relationship with our elected officials and got $5.3 million in 2 different bills and 2 different sessions of the legislature for our 70-unit project that we are now building. It's actually $11 million project, so not quite half of that came from the state legislature. So just a combination, fundraising and grants of various different sources.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Nate?
Yeah, I think for us, the general attitude and perception is a lack of concern with the cost of construction, and even in what now is a volatile construction climate, right? We very much have the attitude when we walk into a project, whether we have $1 in our pocket or $1 million in our pocket, that the money has already been provided. That the problem isn't the money, it's that our banker friends won't give God a checking account. And so God deposits that money in other people's checking account, and it becomes my job to go around and see who knows that they have an abundance and have been blessed. And this is a community response to homelessness. And so there's a variety of parties that can play into funding projects like this, whether it's our city, state, county, federal government, whether it's private funds, grants, foundations, different industries and things like that. We're primarily private funded in Springfield, but not all of our Eden villages around the country are. That's a choice for every community to make. And it's really a relational choice based on your connections to the cities and states.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Maria Fernanda?
Yes, so we also use like a lot of type of fundings. Our I think biggest and most important funding comes from companies. So what we do is that we knock doors to companies that are open to funding projects, you know, and have programs, funding programs. So we offer them the opportunity to basically do volunteer work with their workers, so they can kind of do team building as well. And they would go ahead and buy a house for a family, and then they would go with us and build that house for that family. So that is basically like 70% of our funds. And the other 30%, well, it's students and schools. So we do a lot of crowdfunding, and also university help us out too, because they also want, you know, like their students to go out and have the opportunity and live the opportunity and basically have the same things that I had when I was a student. So to learn the same things, and they help us like purchasing certain amount of houses as well for these communities. What we do in return is that we give them, you know, reports of how these families are doing, how the community is thriving, what else are we doing within the community, and how we're helping them change, you know, their conditions.
Awesome. Thank you. We have 5 minutes left of this hour, so I wanted to really quickly bring up this. Oh, Susan, please.
So Ruth asked a question about the advantages and disadvantages of federal funding, and that's a big question that if I could just ask each of you to answer when you have your hour presentation coming up, and that way that can be given kind of the time that it needs. So thank you.
Absolutely. And so if there's any questions that we weren't able to answer during this session, we'll make sure that, they are answered in the other hour-long sessions for each one of your organizations. With this 5 minutes left, there was one question that I feel like can be answered very quickly with a yes or no answer. Barbara said, is there a resource that includes a kind of blueprint or a book that outlines the how-to that addresses the foundation of a tiny home village, for example? So in a sense, is your project easy, not easy, but like can be replicated in other communities? Do you offer some sort of training for that, for other people to learn more on how to implement that in their own communities? Yes or no answers. We start with Amber.
Yes, and I can tell you more when you come to my session.
Bam, there you go. Camille and Samuel.
I would say not yet, but we will have.
Perfect. Dan.
Yes, and I put information in the chat. We also do consultations, and I also want to give a shout out because we went to visit Community First about 5-6 years ago, and they were just so wonderful in just giving us a tour and giving us tons of information, very helpful, and we're glad to do the same. If you want to come to Eugene, Oregon, we'll be glad to give you all kinds of hands-on experience.
Wonderful. Nate?
Yes, we do. We have cities come and tour all the time, and then we do conferences every quarter, much like Community First, and explain the mission and the vision over a couple days.
Awesome. And finally, Maria Fernanda.
Yes, I mean, we've been replicating it for the past 25 years.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you, all of you, for being part of this webinar. Thank you to our audience for being here and watching this webinar. This will also be posted on our YouTube channel, and it will become a little podcast series as well that you'll be able to listen in all different platforms. We're grateful for the opportunity that we get to showcase all your work, experience, and feel the compassion that you're feeling for your own communities, and inspire others, hopefully, in different compassionate cities and communities that we have around the world to take on this amazing work. I wanted to really quickly share my screen and show you our website, charterforcompassion.org. If you want to know more about this specific webinar series, you can go to Communities right here on the top menu, Communities Webinars, and right here, Housing is a Human Right. This will give you the schedule for the different organizations that are going to be presenting every Tuesday until August 30th or September 6th. And we are going with Amber and Community First Village in Austin next Tuesday at the same time. Thank you everyone for being here. If you want to learn more, there's also a blog entry on our website that talks about housing and the reason why we wanted to do this, because this is important to us. We care about this, and truly grateful for the example and the inspiration that you're giving us all. So
Yes, thank you.
Please, Susan, anything else?
I was just going to say, you are all living examples of compassion in action. So thank you so much for what you do in your communities. Thank you for what you do for our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. It is, you are an inspiration, each and every one of you. Thank you.
So if you want to know more about each one of the organizations, please join us the next the next 5 Tuesdays, so you can learn a little bit more in depth with the different organizations and how they're doing their things. But this will be available for everyone on YouTube and in podcast and in SoundCloud as well. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.